You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? America Off the Rails has been declared a conservatives-only safe zone. Only conservatives allowed from this point forward. Any liberal, socialist, butthurt, hippie, tree huggers, please exit the facility immediately. Again, attention please. America Off the Rails is now designated as a conservative safe zone only. All butthurt, tree-hugging, hippie, free-to-be, you-and-me types exit the facility immediately. Thank you.
The internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Whoa! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Let's get started again.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Oh, welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Don't expect us to admit a mistake. We're paying off election.
Keep on doing what you do, Rick. You're my favorite host.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
All right, folks. Well, this is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. We are live with you right now, whether you're listening through K98 Talk, through iHeartRadio around the world, through several different internet affiliates, AMFM247.com, or WNJC 1360 AM. We want to welcome all of you to the show because at some point, one way or the other throughout the week, you will be hearing the show. Now, this evening, I do have Mr. Jackson Richman with me. You may know him from a show that he does in the D.C. area. Now, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring him on the air. We're going to actually spend the first few minutes talking with him about who he is, what he does, and how you can interact with him if you choose to. And then he has some updates for us from the AIPAC convention that's been going on. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time zone you may be in for whoever's listening. How are you, Mr. Richmond? Sorry, I'm tripping over my own tongue this evening. You'd think I didn't get paid to do this or anything.
I'm doing well. How are you, Rick?
Well, if I was any better, it'd probably be illegal. But other than that, I'm doing all right. Okay, so just in case we have some folks who may not know who you are yet, why don't you go ahead and tell folks a little bit about yourself, where it is that they can find you should they choose to interact with you after the show. And bear in mind, at this point, you are going out on about 12 different affiliates and through iHeartRadio, so don't be too nervous, just saying.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. You can follow me on Twitter at Jackson Richman, JacksonRichman. My last name is not spelled like the capital Virginia. Anyway, last year I was a fellow at the Weekly Standard, and now I'm a contributor for outlets such as New Voices Magazine, which is an outlet primarily targeting Jewish students on college campuses. I also contribute to Red Alert Politics and American Action News, in which I covered the AIPAC Policy Conference that's been happening over the past 2 days for that conservative publication. And that's pretty much my life so far. Also, I'm a student at GW, so I am entrapped in the liberal sphere.
Yeah, well, I'm sure at some point you'll figure out a way to break out of there. Now, I didn't hear you mention one thing that I wanted to make sure that we touch on. Don't you also host a radio show someplace, or did I miss you mentioning that?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I do have a radio show along with a few other friends on GW's radio station, gwradio.com. It's called Hear the Press. It's a spin-off of the name Meet the Press. It's on every Sunday from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time at gwradio.com. I always post the link to the show on my Twitter page. Again, my handle is at Jackson Richman, JacksonRichman.
And for anyone,
basically, we discuss current events, mostly politics, from different political perspectives. I usually give the conservative perspective, and then one of my friends gives a liberal perspective, and then another one of my friends gives a moderate perspective, and then we have one other guy. He gives more of a traditional conservative perspective, because I identify myself more as a neoconservative than just your average conservative. So you have perspectives from all over the political spectrum.
Awesome. So since you did specifically identify yourself as a neoconservative, what do you view some of the differences are between a neoconservative and a more classical conservative?
I think it has to do with, one, the use of the military and America's involvement abroad, and two, I find neoconservatism to be interventionist, of course. That's pretty much the military aspect of the perspective, along with a belief in conservative principles with some flexibility. For example, the godfather of neoconservatism, Irving Kristol, said regarding deficits that it's okay to run a federal deficit, but of course it's not good to add $11 trillion in debt, which has been the case under the current administration. And it's contrary to the conservative notion that there cannot be much of a welfare state. And I like that flexibility. I feel like it does adapt more to today's challenges.
It's interesting that you bring up the welfare state. So as a neoconservative, What would you say that your group's stances are on things that the classic conservative movement would consider the welfare state? Are you guys more okay with it? Do you basically accept it as a necessary evil, or do you just basically embrace it altogether?
I am someone who doesn't mind going into a bit of deficit or a bit of debt, but I am not for recklessly spending, which has been the case under the current administration. And I am for shrinking government because I think it has grown out of control under this administration. I think Bush did grow it a bit, but I think under President Obama, it has only increased and become more inefficient and more reckless. And we've had a rude wake-up call as a result. I mean, look at the current election. People are fed up with Washington. So, for example, I would drastically shrink the Department of Education. I would not abolish it yet, but I would incrementally and significantly decrease that department. I was in the building, which the Department of Education building, that is, this past summer. It is humongous, or as Trump would say, it's huge.
Now, you got to put the emphasis in there. It's huge. It's huge, I tell you.
Huge. So I'm just that type who believes in flexibility.
So one of the things that we don't get that often around here, because our usual demographic is a lot older than you. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is to kind of get a millennial perspective of what's going on in this election cycle. What are your thoughts about what is going on inside of the GOP this cycle?
So from my perspective, I don't know if it's necessarily a quote-unquote millennial perspective. However, at this time last year, I thought there would be a divide within the GOP between moderate conservatives and neoconservatives such as myself and traditional conservatives. However, little did I know that there would be this implosion of populism led by Donald Trump. And I talked with Jim Garrity of National Review at the bar we were at CPAC. That's where I met you.
So wait, you were hanging out with Jim Garrity before you... Was that before or after you talked to me?
I think that was before I talked to you. And
okay.
I was all over the place. We were all over the place.
If it was after, I was going to be a little insulted. But if it was before, that's okay. No, I'm just playing.
And so I told him these thoughts, and he agreed and even added that both parties are imploding. And he's correct. So this election has been about expecting the unexpected. And, of course, it's been nasty, as is the case with any election cycle.
Well, I mean, and you said it right there. I mean, let's face it, there really hasn't been any type of a civil election cycle in my lifetime, probably well before my lifetime. But I have to admit, this is the first one, I think, where the American public, to my knowledge, is almost as visceral, if not more visceral, than the politicians that are involved in it. I mean, I don't know how much time you honestly spend on social media. I spend more than I should because I'm always trying to promote stuff. But this election cycle has just completely blown everything up. I mean, you can't even give an opinion anymore without getting jumped 6 ways from Sunday, no matter which side of the argument you're on. Because if you say something that's against Trump, all of a sudden you're not conservative. If you say something, well, maybe there's something that you agree with, which has happened with like 2 or 3 things that Trump has said that I actually do agree with. I'll point that out, and all of a sudden everybody thinks that all of a sudden I'm jumping on the Trump train. That could not be further from the truth. For the most part, I mean, I don't know if you've noticed it, but there's a hashtag going around called Make America Sane Again. That one's mine. I started that one about 3.5 months ago, and it was because I just, at this point, in between Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and Hillary Clinton, I think at this point we are looking at what could possibly be the beginning steps of the end of our country if we're not careful. Because if we wind up with any of those 3 people at the helm, I don't know what's going to happen. And I honestly don't know if any other candidate that's out there is a better choice. I think Cruz is probably the most constitutional and conservative choice. But there are things about him that I'm not so sure about either. But I mean, he's definitely at this point the one that I could actually vote for and have voted for, that I didn't feel like I was completely betraying my beliefs. And one of the things that I keep getting so much guff over and over again is the fact that if I refuse to vote for Trump in the general, that I'm helping Hillary get elected. The one point that I keep trying to get across to everybody is, obviously, if you feel that way, you don't understand enough about how the general electoral process works, because I could write in Mickey Mouse and my state's still going to go for Donald Trump. It really is that simple. This last election cycle, my state went 77 counties red. Me deciding I'm not going to vote for Trump is not going to change that. Now, enough of the people in my state, if they decide to do that, that may impact something, but I seriously don't think that's going to happen, because my state always votes Republican. I don't remember the last time it didn't.
Moreover, a vote for Trump is a vote for Hillary.
Exactly. And, well, I mean, in the general, and not so much, but in the primary at this point, because everybody knows that's been paying attention that Trump, there's no way Trump is going to beat Hillary in the general election. I don't care how much of the Kool-Aid you've been drinking. I don't care how much of the hype you've bought into. He's got too many scandals. I just saw again today an article, and at this point I'm trying to get 2 or 3 more sources on it before I really go too far into it. But I saw an article alluding to the fact that he might be coming up on money laundering charges if he hasn't been brought up on them already. But of course I want to dig into that a little more before I start talking about it everywhere, because I'm not so sure the sources have been validated yet.
Yeah. And just say I read an article on the Daily Caller, and it was about Bill Clinton bashing Obama's record. And I've been saying this for a while, that the Obamas and Clintons are friends. So regarding the chances of a DOJ indictment of Hillary Clinton regarding her emails and foundation and all that other dirty laundry, that the chances are likely that we shouldn't be surprised if the DOJ decides to indict Hillary, because the Obamas and Clintons aren't friends, and also Biden can jump into the race and raise millions of dollars in 2 seconds. Not a problem. It's like Biden is a go-to option. Furthermore, I think it's going to come down to a brokered or contested convention. I don't see Trump getting the necessary amount of delegates to secure the nomination. I'd rather have a brokered or a contested convention than Trump being the nominee. And look, it'll save the GOP. Will it be pretty? No, but what election cycle is pretty?
Well, I mean, at this point, I have to agree with you. Now, if Kasich was not holding out for the brokered convention, which he's basically admitting at this point, if it would actually get to the point where it was just Trump and Cruz, I think either one of them would have a shot at possibly, depending on how the next few primaries go, actually have a shot at securing the magic number. But with Kasich remaining in the race, I don't think either one of them is going to get there. I think that one of them will get enough that if I understand the process correctly enough, and this is not something that I've delved into completely, so I'm not like a policy guru when it comes to the GOP primaries, because they pretty much change the rules every time there's a new House Speaker. But at the same time, from what I understand, I think at this point we'll probably be looking at something closer to a contested convention, which is a little different than the brokered convention. If it goes
either way, it's not going to go for Trump. Either way, it will not work in Trump's favor.
Yeah, and see, here's the thing. As much as I don't like Trump, I'm not sure I like the idea of taking things to a contested convention, only because there's going to be so many people that are going to feel like their vote didn't matter. I think the damage to the party at that point may be irreversible. If at this point, if it's not already, because I talk to people every day that are actually considering trying to get involved in a viable third-party movement. I don't think the Libertarian Party has ever made it to that point. Well, but
also third party is not going to do much, and I highly recommend reading an article from a couple weeks ago in the Chicago Tribune about Trump running third party, that logistically and financially it would be improbable for him to run third party. Furthermore, Charles Krauthammer, who is an inspiration of mine, said this past week on Social Report with Brett Baer on Fox News that a contested convention shouldn't feel out of the ordinary. Conventions have been part of the election process over the past 150 years. It's just that we haven't had one recently because the frontrunner has used to secure the nomination. And I agree with Charles. I mean, this idea of a brokered or contested convention isn't something that's out of the ordinary. It's just something that hasn't been done in decades. And if I'm not mistaken, the last time it was done was in 1976 when Reagan was kicked to the curb in favor of Gerald Ford, who lost. I'm sorry, if that's correct, 1974? Or 76?
No, it was 76, because the next election cycle after that was 80.
Right, so yeah, 76. I'm sorry, yeah, Gerald Ford, who lost to Jimmy Carter.
Not bad. But yeah, no, that's exactly right. In 76, there was I believe it was a brokered convention. Ronald Reagan was kicked to the curb. Gerald Ford was nominated. He lost to Carter. We had like the worst economy ever for like 4 years. And then Reagan cleaned his clock in 1980. So, I mean, the thing about it is at this point, I honestly don't know what's going to happen with the Republican Party as a whole. I do know that the conservative movement as a whole is completely disgusted with the Republican Party. I think what concerns me about the Republican Party is the whole alt-right movement at this point. I actually had someone tweet out to me the other day that I needed to get in line and join the new right, which was the alt-right. And I basically told him in no uncertain terms if he was an example of the new right wing of the conservative movement, that I wanted no part of it. And he blocked me, so whatever.
Yeah. I mean, there are conservatives that I agree with, such as Lindsey Graham and John McCain, not just because of their hawkish views, but also because of their political strategy. And yes, I know people have been ripping on McCain and hope that he loses re-election and finally says goodbye to Washington this year when he's up for re-election. But, for example, regarding defunding Planned Parenthood, Lindsey Graham was on Fox News' special report with Brett Baer a couple months ago and said, I would like to defund Planned Parenthood. However, with a Democrat in the White House, it's not feasible. And I shared Lindsey Graham's sentiment. I mean, it's realistic. We're not going to be able to defund Planned Parenthood, which I think is nothing but a mangle of mafia. And I suggest people read my article on American Action News about why that's the case, why Planned Parenthood is a mangle of mafia, especially considering that its founder, Margaret Sanger, was a eugenist, like Mengele. But, Obama's not going to approve of a spending bill that includes defunding Planned Parenthood. So I think we need to be realistic in that, and it's not just the GOP, but in the political discourse in general. We need less pathos and more ethos and logos. We need to think and analyze less emotionally and more critically.
All right, so just to clarify one thing, because I have to admit I was a little surprised by something that you said. So you actually align yourself with Lindsey Graham and John McCain? Did I hear that right?
Mostly.
Okay.
But I do sympathize with Dave Brad and others who think we've caved too much to the president, and that's why I'm glad that we had a change in the speaker position with Paul Ryan, who I think can bridge the divide between the moderate and traditional conservatives, especially the Freedom Caucus, which is far to the right. So yes, again, it goes back to my perspective about being flexible regarding conservative perspectives.
So just for the sake of our listeners, what are some of the things that you feel the conservative movement should be more flexible on, just so I know that we're giving them the full picture?
Well, I think it has to do with being realistic. For example, defunding Planned Parenthood. That won't happen under this president, unfortunately. In order to defund Planned Parenthood, the GOP will need to win the White House this November. Because we do have control of the legislative, but not the executive branch. So we need to be smart, strategic, and realistic when it comes to achieving our goals. And that's why I think flexibility is a huge word, and obviously is lacking in D.C., which has been the case for decades.
Well, yeah,
but now we see it more than ever, and we see with this election where voters are fed up with Washington. That's why Trump is so popular, because he echoes the average American sentiment toward Washington, that barely anything gets accomplished and is out of touch with the American people.
I mean, I can see that. Okay, so we are about to have to take a break here in just a second, because since this does go out to some other affiliates, we don't typically run for a full hour, because sometimes they run commercials for a little bit longer than I do. But before we take the break, I have one quick question. Let's pretend for the next minute or so, just as a quick overview, that you were suddenly elected president of the United States. What would be a couple of things that you would do if you were suddenly handed the reins to the free world?
The first would be to reorganize and strengthen the military. Under the current president, our standing abroad has been nothing but a joke and reckless. We need to combat radical Islam and have someone who says and effectively does so, someone who does say radical Islam, and not just drops 8 sorties a day, which, according to a recent report by the House Foreign Affairs Committee, chaired by Congressman Ed Royce of California, because the Obama administration, according to that report, has rejected 75% of proposed strikes against ISIS. We need to take the battle to ISIS by air, by ground, and by cyber warfare. Another item that the next president will need to accomplish is stimulate job growth. That means lowering taxes, revamping the tax code, also shrinking the size of government to where people don't feel restricted by government and can enjoy and prosper through free enterprise. Of course, and as it was stated on O'Reilly by both Charles Krauthammer and Bill O'Reilly, of course, education. Access to education is crucial to be successful in the workplace. And that is through school choice, where we get rid of property taxes and promote competition among public schools, which have been plagued by teachers' unions, which is another ballgame in and of itself. And it's a domino effect that through quality education, you can achieve whatever you dream as long as you work hard. And that can only be possible through a free market system, not through what Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton are proposing. And then third, I would reestablish the relationship with Israel. I know it connects to my first point, which is re-strengthening our military and standing abroad. However, Israel, I think, is America's greatest ally, and you could see that on full display at the AIPAC policy conference, which I'll discuss. And Israel has been neglected by the current administration. We need to reestablish ties with the only democracy in the Middle East, and then hopefully this country will see better days, and that'll be morning in America.
All right, folks, we are going to have to take a quick break, pay some bills. As promised, when we come back, we'll still have Jackson with us, and we'll actually start talking about the AIPAC convention that he's been covering for the last couple of days. This is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. We'll be right back with you here in just a couple minutes. All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business, and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you, so make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
Not on. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the
On my watch, our military service members say, as they volunteer to serve, as they move out, stand firm, and take fire. So not on our watch, we say, to the severely ill or injured veterans who can't get the care they deserve to live full and independent lives, even when there's no government funding or a nursing home seems like the only option. We won't leave one warrior behind. Not on our watch. Join us at findwwp.org.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement, and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method, and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry, or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
The staff of K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network is proud to announce that our very own Rowdy Rick Robinson has been selected as one of the top conservative talk show hosts in the nation for his program America Off the Rails. Again, congratulations to Rowdy Rick Robinson for a job well done and another reason to stay connected to K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network.
I'm your host, Rick Robinson. We are into the last half of the show already. My oh my, where does the time go? As promised, we still have Mr. Jackson Richman with us here today. We're actually going to, as of now, get to what we'd promised. He's been at AIPAC now for a couple of days, so we're actually going to let him tell us a little bit about that. So I've got a couple of questions for you to start it off, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So after being there now for a little bit, what was your overall impression of the event?
Aside from the usual rhetoric that the U.S.-Israel relationship is strong as ever, it was the largest delegation in the history of the conference. 18,000 plus attended, and actually, it's usually held in it's usually held in the Washington Conference Center. But this year, since there wouldn't have been enough space to hold the event in the convention center, the general sessions featuring the presidential candidate and Speaker Paul Ryan were held in the Verizon Center. So that's quite a scene. And out of the presidential candidates, Ted Cruz was the best. He's brilliant, articulate, and powerfully delivered. And he even took shots at Trump from the start. Trump said something about Palestine. At the beginning of his speech, Ted Cruz said, quote, "Palestine has not existed since 1948, end quote." So, leaving the convention center, leaving the Verizon Center, I still had chills in me listening to Ted Cruz, who is remarkable. I thought the second best candidate was John Kasich, and then followed by Hillary, even though I disagree with most of her speech and think she's nothing but a career political crook, and then followed by Donald Trump, who's a clown show. And I thought it was more of a promotion for his Trump brand and barely serious regarding policy issues.
Well, I mean, let's face it. And I've been saying this now for weeks. I think one of the reasons why Donald Trump has now all of a sudden decided that he's too good to debate, the guy that for weeks and months has been saying, look, just let me debate Ted Cruz one-on-one. And then all of a sudden, Ted Cruz is like, yep, right here. And Donald Trump is like, yeah, never mind. You remember that? Like, I got to go, everybody's complaining about my hair and my tan, so I got to go take care of that. So yeah. But anyway, bit of a joke at his expense there. But, I mean, it's just annoying to me, and it's one of the things that I've been saying now for weeks. Refusing to debate now that we are seriously down to a two-candidate run and the training wheel guy who's just praying that we get to contested to either contested or brokered, and then he gets the nomination, which is Kasich. At this point, this would be the perfect time for Donald Trump and Ted Cruz to actually start getting down to brass tacks. And what annoys me is when I bring this up on Twitter, all I keep hearing is, look, if you want policy, Rick, go to the internet. Look, the internet is not where we decide things. The internet is where we, the general populace, go and we talk and we converse and we have the ability to interact with people that are more famous than we are, better well-known than we are, all that fun stuff. But the internet is not where I want to go to get the answers to my candidates' questions, because it's really easy to read somebody's website, but it's not as easy to read the website and actually be able to gauge their intent. I want to be able to see the look on their face, read their body language. Those are the type of things that are important for debates. And for Donald Trump to still... I'm surprised he went to AIPAC, because I know he's been dropping out of quite a few of those things lately, so I was surprised to hear that he was there. Now, backing up for just a second, because I've been talking a little more than I wanted to, just in case some of the folks that are listening have never heard of AIPAC, why don't you go ahead and remind folks of what that was again, and then we'll actually move on to Hillary, because I know you had a few things you wanted to say about her.
Sure. So AIPAC is a bipartisan pro-Israel lobbying group that strives to maintain U.S.-Israel relationship. And it goes from U.S. aid to Israel, which I am skeptical of, but that's another ballgame. Considering, think about it, Israel's economy is prosperous compared to the 80s when its economy was in the tubes. Anywho, AIPAC strives to maintain the U.S.'s relationship through lobbying and educational programming. Basically, it's like the Jewish Oscars or ESPYs or whatever major award ceremony you want to insert after the adjective Jewish. Though it's important to note that it's not just Jews, but a lot of other backgrounds of pro-Israel supporters are there. Hispanics, African Americans are also present. It's remarkable. All 50 states and even abroad.
Now, see, I have to admit, I knew that it existed, but I wasn't actually that familiar with it, which is one reason why I wanted to have you on. I wasn't aware that there was anywhere where, because... I've been to a few political conventions here and there, but I've never actually been to one that was basically a U.S.-Israeli centered one, and that basically everybody was invited and involved. So when you had said that Hillary was going to be there, at first I was kind of scratching my head. Then I did a little research, and I was like, oh, that would explain that. But you had mentioned that you had heard a few things that you thought were interesting from her while you were there, if memory serves. So why don't you go ahead and enlighten folks, because at this point we are getting a little long in the show.
Yeah. Hillary delivered her usual rhetoric, very ambiguous. I published an article today on American Action News, what Hillary Clinton said at AIPAC. So she just ambiguously talked about her commitment to strengthen the U.S. relationship with Israel, while also taking jabs at Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, who said he would be neutral between the Israelis and Palestinians. Hillary also announced that if elected, she would, as soon as possible, meet with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which I don't think would happen. Also, she said that Israel's security is non-negotiable. Basically, she said all these recycled and false phrases. Because let's remember that during her tenure as Secretary of State, she started the negotiations with Iran. And it created this domino effect to where a deal was reached with Iran last year. And I don't even like to call it a deal as much as it's a surrender. Look, appeasement never works. It didn't work in 1938, and it won't work nowadays.
Yeah, well, the problem with history is those who don't study it are always doomed to repeat it, and we are surrounded by a bunch of folks in Washington that apparently slept through history class because they're doing all the things that have already happened before, and they're all happening again, starting with appeasement. Now, I mean, whether you like it or not, the similarities right now between the populist movement that Trump has stirred up and the beginnings of Nazi Germany are absolutely scary. And no, for anybody who's paying attention, I did not call Donald Trump a Nazi. That is not what I said. I said the similarities are astounding. I'm not sure if he's going to be anything like Adolf Hitler if he gets the nomination and also the election, but I'm a little scared that he might be, because one of the things that I
find him to be Mussolini-esque.
Well, you know, and that's a scary thing. Have you seen that little Twitter thing that's going around that has those two standing side by side making similar facial expressions? That creeped me out, I'm not going to lie.
No, but they would probably creep me out, too.
It was really weird. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, honestly, if I'm going to make a comparison, I think Mussolini would probably be closer, at least based on overall attitude and everything else. But that's what scares me about the populist movement that is currently coming to fruition here in our country, because I've said for a long time, if enough of the populace becomes angry that we actually start moving dark, and if anything, the last couple of weeks have shown me is just how dark our populace is becoming, because now there are basically people protesting on both sides anytime Donald Trump tries to go in anywhere, and they don't ever stay civil on either side of it. So as far as I'm concerned, a lot of them on both sides should be being arrested, because it's not free expression when you start beating the crap out of each other. It stops being free expression.
It's just a city on a hill.
Well, yeah.
Furthermore, why are conservatives getting angry? I mean, Mark Levin recently stated on his TV program that where's the conservative action?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of us...
I think Cruz exemplifies that. He's the one who can wake up conservatives, and I think it should not come as a surprise that Cruz can stop, not be the nominee, but stop Trump from becoming the nominee. He can be that roadblock that the GOP desperately needs. It's weird. Most of the GOP, I think it's fair to say that most of the GOP does not like Cruz. But I think this is an irony where Cruz does the GOP a favor by stopping someone who does not represent the GOP's values, who doesn't represent the party of Lincoln and Reagan.
Well, don't tell any of his supporters that he doesn't represent the party of Reagan, because the first thing they'll start doing is drawing comparisons. And I mean, I'm not even gonna pretend I was a kid when Reagan was president, but he was a hero of mine as far as presidents go, because I was watching in second grade on a TV the day that he got shot. From that point forward, he was basically a hero of mine, because anybody that could take a bullet, make a joke, and keep on trucking, that was a tough SOB. I'm just saying. But at the same time,
when you saw James Brady shot,
huh?
When you saw Brady shot.
I saw
the guy who took the bullet for Reagan.
Well, no, actually, there was a point when actually Reagan was shot.
Right, yeah. Okay, that moment. Okay.
Yeah, no. So I mean, yeah, because there was a point in time when actually Reagan was shot. There were actually 2 attempts, if memory serves, because he actually did wind up going into surgery to have a bullet removed because he had made a joke right before he went under anesthesia. I hope you guys are Republicans. And the lead surgeon, who happened to be a Democrat, looked at him, smiled, and said, "Today, Mr. President, we're all Republicans." And that was just the way Ronald Reagan was. He could work. He was always able to work a room. And that's the one thing that I think that Trump can't do. What scares me about Trump is he's
not a unifier.
Image of a unifier at all. He's not. He keeps telling everybody that he is. But I think the interesting thing are the parallels between the 2008 election cycle and the election cycle now. The only difference is it's a flip side of the same coin. Now our side is the one getting the tingles down their legs when they go to vote for the guy instead of actually paying attention to what he's saying. And that's what scares me, because we've always been the folks that are like, you need to think, you need to be rational, you need to make sure that you're not always leading with your emotions. And then the one chance that we have an opportunity to actually put forward someone who does exemplify all of the conservative ideals that we've been talking about now for the last 8 years, and we go for Trumpy the Clown. I really don't see much hope for the party.
It probably would be the biggest egg the GOP dropped since Watergate.
Probably. Anyway, so
also I thought Kasich spoke very well at the AIPAC convention. He was the second best. He talked about his experience in the House. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was on the Foreign Affairs Committee or Homeland Security. One of those committees that directly works with foreign policy, works with Israel, and I like that Kasich outlined his resume. I think that's important for someone who doesn't have as much exposure as Trump.
I mean,
you have to remember that Kasich is still in the race, either because he has some deal with Trump, which Dana Lash said a few days ago that could be the case. We don't know. Or that he's trying to promote himself all the way to a contested convention, which is what's been anticipated.
No, and I guess my biggest thing with Kasich is at this point, I mean, the guy has won one state, his home state.
Yeah, and it's mathematically impossible for him to win the nomination. Mathematically impossible.
Well, the thing that annoys me about him is he knows it. So, I mean, I don't honestly at this point care how articulate he is or how well he talks, because, I mean, to put this in a language that the audience is going to understand, and bear with me, at this point, Kasich is behaving, I mean, there's not a nicer way to put it. He's basically behaving as a cockblock, because he's stopping either one of the two frontrunners from actually clearly getting the nomination. And I think that's happening by design, because at this point, since Rubio couldn't do it, and there were other folks that the establishment was counting on, they're now all heavily leaning on Kasich. And what scares me about that is, like I said, and this is just me, and I'm just a pundit. I'm just a guy that talks, and occasionally I make money for talking. So it's not like I'm anybody that important. But my thing with that is, I think at this point it honestly needs to get down to the two guys that are the clear front runners and let them duke it out. Because I honestly think if it was a clear contest between Trump and Cruz, and a fair contest between Trump and Cruz, Cruz could win. Because we're seeing now that Rubio's out of the way. Cruz is actually closing a lot of the margins and a lot of the gaps that everybody thought he wasn't going to be able to close. So the only one that's still siphoning votes at this point is still Kasich. Because he's still there, that's why we're going to probably wind up with a contested convention. And I don't like the concept of the contested convention because it may wind up giving us someone like Kasich, who I honestly don't think deserves to be there because that's not who the public wants there. I mean, look, as much as I don't like Trump, if it got to the point where it came down to a fair contest between Trump and Cruz and Trump still managed to pull it out, I wouldn't be voting for him, but I wouldn't begrudge anybody else who did. Because that's the way this is supposed to work. And I understand that a contested convention is not anything new, but in this instance, I don't really think it's necessary, other than the fact that at this point, the establishment doesn't want either Cruz or Trump. And that's the thing that everybody that's fighting amongst the Cruz and the Trump camp don't want to come to terms with, is at this point, there are differences and clear delineated differences between the candidates, but at the same time, they are both, as far as the GOP is concerned, outsiders. I mean, look at the recent election the recent primary in DC. I mean, Trump beat Cruz, but not by much. But Cruz came in almost dead last. The only other, there was one other category of other. They got I think 2%. Then it was Cruz. Then it was Trump. And then after that, I don't remember who came in second and first, because I think at that point there were still four folks in the race. Actually, I think it was Kasich and then Rubio, because at that point they were both still in. And I mean, look, I don't like the idea of a Trump presidency, but I also don't like the idea of the establishment folks trying to make sure that they still get to be the ones to make the pick. And to me, that's why Kasich is in the race. And I don't like that concept, not at all.
Thing is, in order to stop Trump, there has to be a contested convention. One, do you think Cruz can come from behind? Two, the media hype has played a factor in Trump's rise. And third of all, would Cruz be able to defeat Hillary in the general election?
According to all the polls,
I don't think so.
According to all the polls that I've seen, Cruz is one of the only ones besides Marco Rubio who did beat her head-to-head in most polls. I mean, Trump, 24 out of 28 polls loses. It was almost vice versa for Cruz and Rubio.
However, we're not in the general election stage. You have to consider that. We haven't had a general election debate yet. So that has to be factored in.
No, and I understand that, but I honestly don't think Kasich can go toe-to-toe with Hillary in a general election debate either.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I do think he would do better than Cruz, but do I think Kasich would win over Hillary at the end of the day? No.
Okay.
I think Rubio is the best candidate, and if it comes down to a contested convention, either Rubio or Romney, preferably Rubio, because Romney had his chance in 2012 and blew it. Rubio should be the GOP nominee. He is the only candidate who can defeat Hillary Clinton. He is not your stereotypical GOP candidate, i.e. white, rich. He is someone who's worked his way from the bottom to the top. I mean, it was apparent at the get-go that Rubio is distinguishable. He said, how can Hillary Clinton lecture me about what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck? I live paycheck to paycheck. How can she lecture me about what it's like to pay off student loans? I just paid off my student loans. That's advantageous. I mean, if not, please tell me what is.
Well, no, and I understand that.
Rubio is the only candidate who can beat Hillary.
And just bear with me here for a second, because this is my thought process here. Rubio couldn't even carry his own state. Rubio didn't win, I think, but one? And maybe Puerto Rico and
Rubio
I think
won
one
Minnesota.
Other?
He won Minnesota and dominated in Puerto Rico, won the District of Columbia, which I predicted. So, and let's think about it. If Trump and Jeb weren't in the race, would Rubio win Florida? Probably.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't see it, because I mean, there's just not enough there. I mean, Cruz is one of the only ones that can say that there have been several times when he has actually gone toe-to-toe with Trump and won. And I honestly think that Cruz could beat Hillary head-to-head. I think he could probably debate circles around her. I mean, let's be honest, the guy has basically argued in front of the Supreme Court how many times? I mean, the fact that
numerous times. And Cruz is a brilliant guy, and I would vote for him if it came down to Cruz versus Hillary. You know, it's not like I would be stuck with the decision of Trump versus Hillary, which I would vote for neither one.
Yeah, I'll take C. None of the above.
And you know what you're getting with Cruz.
Well, yeah, I mean, but, you know, and, you know, I understand that there's still this whole group of folks that are praying that if it goes to contested that somehow Marco Rubio gets the nod. I just really, at this point, with as dismal as his last few performances were, I don't think there's enough there to put the flames out and get it back on course and actually take him all the way through the general. I mean, because his heart's not in it anymore. I mean, that last speech that he gave and then the announcement that he made a couple of days later, he was completely dejected. And I don't blame him because he feels like his entire party turned against him. I mean, because at one point he was the darling of the GOP. I mean, the dude was on Time Magazine not too long ago, touted as being the savior of the Republican Party, and now all of a sudden the whole party's just like, get the hell out of here. So, I mean, I understand why he's frustrated, and I understand why at this point he's kind of rethinking the whole political thing. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I think the party that's told him to get the hell out of here, I think it was the populists and Donald Trump who are sabotaging the GOP that told him to get out.
Well, I mean,
it was evident. I mean, the last straw was in Florida.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. A lot of that populist movement is a part of the Republican Party, so thereby, and basically to use a legal term, ipso facto, it was a lot of the Republican Party, not necessarily the conservatives in the Republican Party, but the party itself that basically told him to take a hike. And I think that's why he's licking his wounds. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if, at least for the next short term, he went back to teaching law somewhere and left politics altogether, because from the flavor that I'm getting, that's exactly what he's talking about. But at this point, folks, we have actually, believe it or not, gone through the entire hour. I want to thank Mr. Jackson Richman for joining us this evening and talking with us about AIPAC 2016 and giving you guys a chance to get to know him. Now, as a reminder, not only does his show air where he talked to you about, but you can catch it every night here on K98, or every Sunday night, here on K98 Talk at 7 Eastern, 6 Central. So feel free to check it out there if you can't catch it anywhere else. And bear with me for a second. What's going on here?
Thank you for having me.
Did I lose everything? I think I did. What just happened? Nice. Nothing like a last-minute trip from the Gremlins. All right, folks, on that note, I have got to get out of here and make way for the next crowd because we've got Late Night in the Midlands coming up here in just a little bit. So as a reminder, don't
cost
go
another
away.
$1,800.
And hang on, that's not my right thing. Yay for Gremlins again. All right, there we go. All right, so now that I've got everything sorted out and the control panel's not fighting me anymore, this is America Off the Rails. I'm Rick Robinson. I'll be back with you live tomorrow night right here on K98 Talk. Don't forget to tune in around the web and around several different affiliates through the radio to check out the show wherever you can, and I'll be back with you live as soon as I can be. You guys take care. God bless and have a great night.
Screw you guys. I'm going home. Later.
Game over, man. It's game over.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, security, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino. And how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com.